peeps and creeps, and welcome to Fright Club. I'm Gav, he's Danny.
Hello.
We're the Fright Club and this is a brand new episode of Monday Night Frights. Last week we went back to Springfield. This week we're going back to Springwood.
Ooh,
it's a Nightmare on Elm Street Part 5.
Nightmare on Elm Street 5.
Dream Child.
The Dream Win.
It's a boy! And we're back with another episode of Monday Night Frights. It's episode 5.8. This week we're talking about Nightmare on Elm Street Part 5. The Dream Child.
The Dream Child. I mean, we're over
the
halfway
dream
there now. The Dream Critter. The Dream Wayne.
The Wayne.
The Dream Wayne. But who is really the Dream Wayne in this movie? Because I mean, is it Freddy or Jacob? I was trying to wrap my head around it and was like, who is the real Dream Child here? Because I mean, this film opens with like one of the fucking wild, or well, it doesn't really open with it, but yeah, that pure mad sequence where we get the birth/rebirth of Freddy, like fucking hell.
There's a lot of mad shit in this film, and I'd sort of forgotten how mental it was. I mean, I only watched it probably a year ago.
It genuinely really lets loose with its like imagery, and the plot is really out there. And it's crazy. Like, it's crazy to think that like this plot was actually first pitched during the production of Dream Warriors, and one of the execs at the time was pregnant. Was like, no, I don't want to see Freddy's hand bursting out of a woman's womb, especially when I'm pregnant. And then after giving birth, she was like, actually, maybe. And then it was like, let's go.
That might be a good idea.
Yeah.
But this is the part of the show where we remind you that we've actually covered the first 4.
We've done
films
4 already, and this is number 5. And I mean, after this, we've gone 2 left. 2.
2.
Yeah, Final Nightmare and Wes Craven's New Nightmare. Well, I mean, are we gonna?
Final. Freddy's dead. Yes.
Freddy's dead. Yeah, Freddy's dead, and then Wes Craven's New Nightmare. Are we going to do Freddy versus Jason?
Oh, fuck,
do the people want Freddy versus Jason? So I mean, we've got 3. Are we going to do?
No.
To make it, and
we're not doing the remake.
Are we not going to do the remake?
We might do the remake. We might.
Let us know in the comments below. Should we do the remake? I mean, we've touched on every other Elm Street property. Should we touch on the stinking one? I mean, there's some stinkers in amongst this, but we enjoy them. But that one's just stinking in like a don't touch it kind of way.
Dirty, grim. Yeah, it's pretty grim.
Remind you that, Freddy's a pedo. But
so anyway, this was released in 1989. It was directed by Stephen Hopkins, who's an Australian filmmaker. I think he'd only made one feature film before this, a film called Dangerous Game. But he would go on to make some pretty big movies after this. He would direct Predator 2. He directed Judgment Night, starring Emilio Estevez. And he also directed Ghost in the Darkness and Blown Away, I think, as well, which is decent, but Tommy Lee Jones plays a Ra man.
Oh, Tommy Lee Jones is Ra man.
It's one of those ones where
I'm intrigued.
His accent sort of is up and down. So,
is he trying to do like
Lucky
a northern accent? Oh, is he going full on hot tea?
I can't remember. I think it's been a long one. I just remember the accent was funny.
I'm going to bomb your house.
My Lucky Charms. But so it was written by Leslie Bowen, who, as you mentioned there, had pitched this whenever they were doing the 3rd movie.
Dream
Warriors! Before they got Wes Craven actually on board to come up with the story, they had pitched, or they had asked a lot of people involved to come up with ideas, and this is the one that they came up with about the child, and they decided not to do it for the reason that you said. And then they got Wes Craven in, and he wrote a treatment, and then they got the other guys in to actually write the script, and they went ahead with the Dream Warriors idea. But they revisited this because it was an idea that they thought, there's something in that, we could do something with Freddy's baby.
Well,
Yeah, they could have done something with Freddy's baby.
Yeah, I mean, there's baby Freddy, and then there's Jacob, who isn't Freddy's son, but Freddy's trying to be like surrogate some sort of
I think
baby.
Yeah, it's difficult to sort of.
It's kind of it's a bit of a rebirth situation. He's trying to come back into the world. The story's a wee bit
jumbled.
Yeah,
it's a wee bit jumbled. It's not quite sure exactly what's going on.
Was there not like a load of edits and stuff done to this? I think during the production they had a bit of bother because there was a lot of changes had to be made. Stuff had to be cut out because of the Motion Picture Alliance didn't want there to be as much blood and gore. So I think Dan and Greta, Dan and Greta's death were their scenes were cut right down because they were just too much. I
don't think any of the cuts affected the story. It was more about the sort of scenes themselves.
Yeah, I think. Well, did the director he cut in a load of stuff with the Asylum because I think he not want to add more of a gothic, which I mean totally comes across and is fucking great, but that was like his touch to the overall thing.
This is known as the Gothic Nightmare, so it's the most sort of gothic of the bunch, and I really love the gothic
set
vibe.
Pieces in this are great. Yeah,
the imagery, the map painting of the Asylum. The very first time you see that map painting of the Asylum, it's fucking unreal.
It's so good. I love it. And even the fact that
map painting, Danny.
We love it. We love a wee map painting. I love that we go back to the chapel from the end of Dream Master. I like that. That's
such an awesome set, man.
Man, see that moment where like baby Freddy has like entered into the jumper and is like growing out of it as like the altar rises up, and then you kind of get Freddy in front of that stained glass window with his arms out, and he's got that one freakishly long arm with the big gangly fingers, and when he's like putting it around himself like
It reminded me of Bart from our episode last week when he was
stretch dude and clobber girl. Bring it back. But yeah, that moment I thought was absolutely fucking fantastic. His silhouette against the stained glass crucifix.
Part 4, Dream Master, was the most successful of the bunch up to this point. No, unfortunately. No? It was still the most successful after.
It was still even after this one. I thought this one, because this one did this not launch around the same time as like the spin-off series and all the like merch and stuff and the Freddy songs and all.
It did, but it didn't do as well at box office. There was quite a big drop off. The budget was 8 million, and it did about 22 million box office. I think at this point there may have been a little bit of oversaturation with Freddy because of the MTV stuff and the spin-off series and all that sort of stuff. Maybe people weren't going straight out to watch him because they could see it on TV, and he was about too much maybe, and he wasn't as scary now.
Right. You know what I found, like, even watching this one, of all the dialogue in this movie, Freddy's for me was I was getting a bit kind of fed up of his like puns and shit. I was kind of like, it just seemed to be every other word he was uttering was like some shit pun or joke, and I was like, come on, man, you're better than that.
It's quite a poorly written script, to be fair. You think about the idea and the story and the concepts, but the actual dialogue and the writing's quite poor.
Clunky. Yeah,
it's very, very clunky.
Compared to him in fucking Elm Street 2, when he's "You're all my children now," like, that's genuinely terrifying. Whereas in this, it's kind of like, you want to make babies.
I know.
Fuck.
That's a good tagline, though. It's a
good tagline. I love that with the dialogue for this. So again, kind of jumping ahead, but the very end when Jacob is turning Freddy's own powers against him, and he uses the line "School's out, Krueger," but what was originally written was "Fuck you, Krueger."
That's right, yeah.
But because the actor, can't mind his name off the top of my head, but he was only 11 and he was told he wasn't allowed to use a sweary, so they changed it to "School's out, Krueger."
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's like, fair play to the wee kid. Like he was put in the makeup.
Mm-hmm.
He was put through quite an ordeal at the end of that movie.
It's all like
quite good. It's actually pretty good for what he has to do. I think his acting's pretty good.
It's really good. It's when he first appears in the kitchen, and he's sort of all done up to look like some wee like grubby child, and you're just kind of like, what's this about? And then as it kind of plays out, you're like, oh shit, like that's the baby, he's the dream child, or the child dreaming. I like that the idea about like, is the baby dreaming when it's inside, can I pick up on those dreams? I was like, that's a really interesting notion, and like, is there not something better they could have done with that?
It's a good notion, it's a good concept, but it was quite poorly executed in how they felt that they had to explain it. And we will get to that special scene later on, which is kind of just like, wow, that's so stupid. I love it. By the way, I'm going to slag this film off, but I love it. I love the whole entire Elm Street franchise, unironically as well, but I will slag it off.
We will recognize the weaknesses.
And we will call them out. Yeah, but we'll also enjoy them. Yeah. Because it's fucking Freddy Krueger and we love that shit. So this film picks up about a year. I think it's about a year after Dream Master, and Alice she's got a new set of friends.
She's got a whole new gang.
She's graduating, and she's found out she's pregnant later. A little bit into the film, she finds out she's pregnant, and ultimately Freddy comes back through the dreams of her child that she is unborn. And that's how he comes back into the world, basically.
It's a bit of a, it kind of has that kind of Nightmare on Elm Street 2 vibe, in that she's a conduit for Freddy, but not as like explicitly as Nightmare on Elm Street 2 makes it. Nightmare on Elm Street 2 has him physically turning into Freddy, whereas in this, it's just through her dream powers that he's able to get to her friends. But like, what about let's talk about the opening credits to this movie. One, I love the title card. I love that it's done in like the children's blue chalk,
like chalk, or crayon. It's chalk, you're right.
Chalk, it's like chalk text, and you get Dream Child, and it plays out the opening credit, the director and producers and the actors' names and stuff. But it's cut between all the title cards are cut between close-ups of some love making. Some intimate love making, some fingers down the back, foot rubbing up a leg, but also the love making has a lovely blue. Yes, there's
it does. I've actually read that there. Genuinely, I've read that in capital letters. Blue hue.
There's a blue hue over the love making that is interspersed.
That's because credits. It's a bit of blue.
It's a bit blue. It's a wee bit blue. It's a wee bit naughty.
Dan and Alice are getting on.
Dan and Alice are getting down and dirty. But then she goes off to the shower, and this is what I was wondering, right?
Hang on, let's just rewind that 1 second. You may already know this. You may have read it, or you may already knew this, and people watching this may already know this little fact, but that is not a fact. Dan having sex with Alice, that is a body double, and his name is Michael Bailey Smith, and he also, because he's a lot more muscular than Dan.
They're very toned. It's very
the body double turns up later on in the film. Super Freddy!
A Super Freddy! Oh my god. So this is the question I was going to ask, because I completely forgot that this was the opening, right? And I was watching it and I was like, who's riding here? Because it doesn't show, you don't see like any faces or anything, or any distinguishable marks. It's just two people riding with a lovely blue hue. But then it cuts away.
Yes.
And it's as it cuts, you see like his hand, like she gets up and walks away. But again, we don't see any faces or anything. You just see somebody get up from the bed and you see his hand resting on the bed. Now, there was a small part of me was like, there's going to be some fucking that's going to do like a wee Freddy twitch or something.
Yeah.
Because I completely forgot that this is how the film opened. But then it cuts to Alice getting in the shower. And then as she turns taps on, she's washing her hair and she's standing there. She doesn't use any soap or anything because they never do in movies. They just stand there and go, But then she notices, she looks down, and it's starting, the bottom of the shower starting to flood. It's like a closet. It's like a shower closet. It's like an enclosed.
Yeah, it's in the wall.
Yeah, it's like
part
into the wall. But I love, and then it starts getting all like dirty, like a load of dirty water, and she like reaches down into it. And you kind of almost get like an Evil Dead thing where like a POV up through the pipe as she's reaching into it, which is a great wee shot. And then everything, the tiles start to like pop off, and all this water comes through, and the shower knobs pop off, and the shower head pops off. Kind of expected Freddy's hand to come out of the shower head at one point, just because, again, so used to this notion of like Freddy's hand coming out of like bathtubs and out of shit. But the shower cubicle fills up with water, and she's left like floating around in it, and you only get, there's no Diddy, just, you know, the faintest hint of Diddy, but it's, you know, it's through faintest hint of Diddy through the kind of
tainted glass.
Not tainted, what's the word?
It's frosted glass.
Yes, through the frosted shower glass.
Yes, apparently Lisa Wilcox refused to be nude. So obviously they filmed
so they'd only show the faintest hint.
No, well, it's not her, it's a body double.
It's not even another body double. But see, what I was thinking was, in that moment, I was like, right, has she done a bit of riding, gone to the shower, and fallen asleep on her way to the shower? Or has she been having a wee riding dream, and in the dream still gone to the shower, and then the dream's just continuing? There was that whole thing. But then obviously as the film plays out and we find out she's pregnant, obviously the riding at the start is the riding that caused the pregnancy.
I know what you mean. I don't think the riding at the start, I think it was a dream. However,
it was a dream,
she's obviously been riding Dan, like they're together.
Because they're together.
It's not as if they're like, ooh. So we didn't really need to see that, I suppose, at the start. But yeah, anyway, she has the
we got a lovely blue hue out of it.
We got a blue hue. And I was thinking, have I put on a Michael Mann film here? What's going on? This is very
I honestly
Heat and Thief.
I've completely forgot that that's how that film started. But yes, so we get the shower scene, and she's floating around, and she's all like help, and then the shower door slapping on the shower door, and it breaks. But as it breaks, she falls into another world, another dreamy world, and she's in the asylum. And fuck, like, I love this. It's so gothy and Burton-esque, and just wonderful.
I fucking love the asylum. I have to say, this whole part of this film that's set in the asylum, and we see it throughout the film and wee bit at the end and stuff. You know, this is what really makes this a great film. I think without that connection to the asylum, it would have been very lackluster.
Yeah,
and it calls back to Dream Warriors, because we see Amanda Kruger, who was a nun, and it shows us that story where we find out that Amanda was raped. You know,
I see when the camera is like bouncing about amongst the psychopaths, and then you get that one psychopath that lingers a bit too long. It's fucking Robert Englund staring straight into the camera at you. You're just like, I mean, if ever there was any doubt about who Freddy's dad was, there he is right there. Not only because he looks like him,
could just be a coincidence.
A pure coincidence.
Could just be a coincidence. You never know. Could have been any of them.
Well, see, it says on the Nightmare on Elm Street wiki that's the biological father.
Who knows?
Apparently so.
Who knows, huh?
But I mean, he looks exactly like him.
He does, he does.
Do we need to do a wee DNA test?
How do you know what Freddy looks like? Sure, his face is burned.
Well, he's got those lovely eyes, doesn't he?
Aye.
Yeah, he's got them lovely eyes. And the beak. Yeah.
There's a great shot just after that when he sort of is close up of his face as well, and it's just he's looking behind him.
Yeah. When they've closed all the doors, and it's just over his shoulder. And
I thought it was funny where all the staff, the orderly, there was two orderlies counting, but they're up on this quite high staircase counting all the maniacs, and the guy's just like 94, 95. He's just counting with his finger like, how shit are they?
And all these guys are just bumbling about, and he's still just like, hello.
Oh, you've made me stop counting, and then your man's like, there's 100, I'll be grand.
There's 100, I'll be fine. But even like, all these like all the maniacs are like disgusting looking, filthy, like wearing rags. This one nun standing in full white habit, shouting, "Don't leave me."
I know.
And they still walk off and leave her. Like, guys, come on.
As if they could have
come on. I love that wee moment when we get introduced as the camera comes over to Amanda Kruger and she's like looking at her name tag. And obviously, I mean, if you'd watched the previous one, But I think, just the fact that she's like, just in case you forgot, that's me. I'm his mom.
I know, but why would she be wearing a name tag?
Because all nuns wear name tags.
Oh, do they? Okay.
That's, I think so. I don't know much about nuns, but I hear they're big fans of name tags.
I love it. I love the asylum. I love how dirty it looks. I love the Gothic feel.
Cobwebs. You know what? It wouldn't pass health and safety standards these days. It would not go down well. No.
It would not. I love Freddy's man. She's grand. Like,
she's fine. I you know what? Actually, of all the performances in this, hers is probably quite solid. Like she knew what the brief was, and she stuck to it.
And throughout this episode, I'm going to be showing you some little bits of my collection. Some of you may know that I collect autographs, and one of the recent ones that I did get was of Amanda Kruger.
Oh my God, Freddy's
I don't know if you can see.
Oh, and she's with wee Jacob.
With wee Jacob. So that is Beatrice Botel plays. I hope that's how I pronounce her surname. She plays Amanda Kruger, so she's brilliant in it.
Nice. Is she wearing her name tag in that picture? Can you see?
I can't see because she's written her name over it, but it doesn't look like she is.
Maybe she's taken off by that point.
Potential. Yeah. But I've got a few more that'll show throughout the episode as well. So just as a wee treat. Just a
little treat, Gav's autograph collection.
So we've established kind of what the basic plot is here. Yeah. Alice is having dreams of Freddy. She knows about Amanda. She finds out she doesn't know she's pregnant right now, but obviously we kind of have an idea that she's going to be pregnant, and it's going to be that sort of connection between the two now because of the child. But I thought it was kind of weird. One of the things that I didn't like about this film, and there's a few things that I don't like about it. Some of the obvious things that you can look past, like dodgy effects and bad acting. That's all part of it. That's fine.
Yeah.
The story comes and goes at times. You can tell that they really just sort of made stuff up on, just on a whim, really. But one of the things that kind of made me step back and go, hang on a second. This is Springwood, okay? This is the same town that Freddy has, killed.
Begging it for donkeys.
Yeah, he's been killing kids for a long time, and this is the same Alice that we just seen in Dream Master, who killed him at the end. That awesome fight scene at the end. Whenever we see her again, she's with a new set of friends. Greta is the model. Yep. Mark is the comic book nerd.
Yeah.
And Yvonne is the swimmer.
Yeah.
Her best friend, I would say. Yvonne's probably closer to her than the other two are.
Yeah.
But they don't seem to know anything about Freddy Krueger.
No. It seems to take a while. You would think, like, if you're good mates with somebody and you've been through some significant trauma in your life, you maybe would have mentioned it even in passing, like something like, beat Dream Demon one time, Yeah, if I beat a Dream Demon, I would definitely tell you about it.
But even if you don't think about that, this is still the same high school.
Yeah.
Isn't it? It's Springwood. It's Springwood High, isn't it? Yeah. Still the same high school. It's only a year after. Yeah. It's only a year after the events of Dream Master. So the people that are graduating surely were there. It doesn't. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense that way. But do you know what? Fuck it. It was the 80s.
Exactly.
It was the 80s.
It doesn't need to make sense all the time. No.
We don't need to explain everything. Exactly. So she's still with Dan, by the way. Yes, we've already spoken about Muscular Dan.
Muscular Dan, but also not so muscular Dan.
Not so muscular.
I mean, it's not that he wasn't. He was a good looking fella, and we don't know what kind of muscles he had. It's just that your other man definitely had better definition.
Well, we do.
And that's why he got used.
We see him later on.
Well,
at the swimming pool. Ooh. For the ladies, that's for the ladies. That one.
True.
So we'll talk about a little bit about the characters first. Greta is the supermodel, who sort of, she's quite pretty, but it does feel like she's being forced into this kind of supermodel
by her man.
By her horrible fucking man. I fucking hate that bitch, man. I always have ever since the first time I've seen this film. I fucking hate that bitch. But she seems like a nice enough girl. Like I like the fact that they didn't really make her.
No, they made her like
mean girl type.
Nice, down to earth. It's just that her man's trying to push her in the direction that she wants her to go. Man, the scene, the dinner party scene, like great scene. And you know what? It just shows again the type of person her ma is and all the people that she hangs out with really plays out in that scene for me, because I was watching it this time. It's just like, why is no one helping her?
I know.
Like the whole time, it's like
they're all just laughing at her.
They're all just, well, no, they're laughing at her in the dream, but I think when it cuts to the kind of real life, everyone's just going like, oh. But it's like,
is she all right?
Is she okay? It's like, fucking somebody get up and give her the fucking Heimlich or something.
Was the Heimlich a thing back here now?
I'm pretty sure the Heimlich.
Probably was.
Someone slap her back. Something.
Do something. So this is where we see the map painting as well of the asylum. It's like Arkham Asylum or something. Man.
It's that moment where
you
almost expect, like, you've kind of seen what's going on in the asylum, and then you kind of expect that crack of thunder, and then it's cuts to the outside of it, and then it should be like thunder and bats flying at the screen and stuff. It's just great. It's so I don't know. It's so Scooby-Doo.
Yeah, it's amazing. I love it. And then whenever we're in the asylum, I think this is when we first see the baby carriage, isn't it? With the spikes.
No, well, that's the second time we cut to the asylum. That's whenever we see the birth of Freddy. But this one is just the maniacs in the asylum. It's whenever she goes back to the asylum the second time, she's walking down the hallway, and the baby carriage goes down past her, and then she kind of like looks around the corner, and it's continuing to go down, but then like hits steps, and Amanda's walking off into a room. But then next thing she knows, she's like being taken away on the stretcher, and they're taking her into a room, and then she's actually the one looking at Amanda.
Because the stretcher, the bit where she's in the stretcher, man, there's some really nice shots in this film. You know, people don't sort of think of this as being, you know, like they don't remember the cinematography in it, which is fair enough. You know, it's not loaded with beautiful cinematography, but there's some really nice shots, especially
really good moments
of the asylum, and you know, really well framed shots. And I love that shot where she's on the stretcher or the gurney, and she's coming towards the camera, and she's leaning back with her head upside down. It reminded me of Return to Oz, which, as you know, I love. And it's definitely a horror film. But at the start of that, there's a scene where she's being dragged, before she goes back to Oz, she's being dragged through the children's asylum, and it's sort of reminiscent of that, because she's going crazy, she's looking everywhere, the lights above are sort of flickering back and forth, so it's casting shadows in the wall. It's a real nice atmosphere. It's really very well done. Yeah,
I really like it. I think it's good. I like before even that there though, we get the kind of, they're graduating, it's their graduation day, and the whole gang, and we kind of get introduced to all the characters and kind of get introduced to their parents as well. And you know, Alice and Dan are going to go off traveling to Europe, but Dan's also kind of, you know, his dad's trying to push him to this football scholarship, and Greta's mum's trying to get her over for photo ops and telling her that she can't have a lick of a lollipop because that's not what models eat. And you know, it's clear to see that whilst they're still trying to be mates, they're also being pulled away to their lives beyond graduation. I think a lot of this film, I think, is about like change and stuff. That's sort of the vibe I picked up off it. It's about change, and how Alice needed to change, and she needed to leave stuff behind. She needed to separate herself from Freddy, which is ultimately what the end of the film's about. But yeah, we kind of get all those moments, and then she's got to go to work after she's graduated. There's that weird bit where they're getting like the photo, their group photo, but all the parents getting on the group photo, man. And they're being all like, buddies forever, and doing like all sorts of poses, and then the parents are all like.
But I thought it was just a really cool thing because the kids are on one side and the parents on the other.
Yeah,
I just thought it was a cool. I don't know why. I just thought it was
the cool. Contrast between them. Yeah, it's a nice touch, but it's very cheesy.
It is, yes.
But then, we cut to Alice heading off to work then, and she's running through the park. And is that not when it cuts to our second asylum moment?
Yes.
But then
she sees the little skip rope girls. Isn't that right?
Yeah, the 1, 2, Freddy's coming for you girls, who, again, she's walking through the park. All the other kids are dressed like normal kids at the time. And then there's just this group of like 4 or 5 girls in like the white dresses playing skip rope and doing the 1, 2, Freddy's coming for you. And then that's when shit's getting weird.
Although at the very end it says 9, 10, he's back again.
Mm-hmm. Oh, it changes it and mixes
it. Who are they talking about, Danny?
They're obviously talking about Michael Myers.
They are.
They're talking about Michael Myers, obviously. Yeah. Who else?
So she goes back into the asylum, and then we see some more lovely shots of the asylum.
Mm-hmm. I love there's that shot. She's walking through the hallway, and it's it's looking down on her, but it's showing one of the arches on the roof, and it's got like the sad cherub face.
Yes,
and it's just a really nice. And again, the style of it is very Burton-esque. Like it's almost kind of cartoony, but it's just again.
Like a gargoyle almost, isn't it?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No, some really nice shots in here. The set design's fantastic, I have to admit.
Mm-hmm.
So fair play to Stephen Hopkins for bringing that to this film.
Yeah.
Then we go back to the church scene, and then this is where you were speaking a little bit at the start of this episode about how the baby.
Oh my god!
You see the baby.
Baby,
not Freddy baby, man. What
Freddy baby is like whenever so Amanda gives birth, and her nun friend is like, take comfort in that this is one of God's creations, and Amanda's like, this is no creation of God, and then we see it, and it's like baby Freddy with the wee bulbous head and the spindly arms and legs, and he like scurries away, and they're like, don't let it get away, but then they let it get away.
I know, they're awful.
But and Alice goes after it and heads into the church after it, the chapel after it, and it crawls up to the Freddy's outfit sitting at the altar, at the foot of the altar, and he climbs into it. He starts crying. He starts to like let out this like awful shrieking cry, and the chapel starts to rumble and fall apart, and as it climbs into the outfit, the altar rises up with like columns and tree trunks and all sorts of stuff, and Freddy starts to. I love whenever the hand slaps down on the altar and the arm stretches out of the sleeve and the fingers are all stretching with it. What a great practical effects moment right there. I think that's one of my favorite moments. I think it's probably one of my favorite Freddy transformation reveals. It's just, again, how it's like wee close-up moments of different parts of Freddy that are coming to life, and he does his whole big stand up in front of the stained glass crucifix, and then he slips his hand into his glove, and it's just great. It's just a great reveal moment for Freddy.
It's class, yeah.
And then he does a fucking stupid line. It's a boy.
Yeah.
It didn't like that for me. I was like, what an amazing moment. And then he says that, and it's like, yes, we know the baby's just been born, but he could have said something a bit better than it's a boy. It felt like it could have been more triumphant if he'd said something sinister rather than comical.
That is true. I will say we've been talking about a lot of cool shots. One of my favorite shots, excuse me, is whenever we see Amanda, the door opens and Amanda's praying, and all the pigeons are behind her, and it's just really gothic, man. It reminded me of The Crow, which obviously The Crow was released a few years after this, but it had that just awesome gothic vibe, but Batman-esque. We were saying about Tim Burton and stuff like that. So really lovely shot, and we sort of see it a little bit later on as well, but not as vivid as this one.
we see the death of Danny or Dan.
So Dan's the first death.
And this actually, I think this is one of my favorites. I think the Dan death is one of my favorites because it reminds me of Tetsuo the Iron Man.
Thank you for saying that. I've also written Videodrome.
Yeah, there. You know what? There's a lot of body horror in this.
Yeah.
There's actually a good whack of body horror in this. But yeah, Tetsuo the Iron Man is the thing that, as I was watching it this time, I was like, that's fucking Tetsuo right there, man. We should talk about Tetsuo sometime.
This scene where Dan dies,
it's a bit like
unreal. Like it's really well.
It goes on for a wee bit longer than I think a lot of the Freddy deaths kind of do. There's like 3 kind of stages to it. But yeah, what?
Well, you said at the start that this is one of the scenes that got cut quite a bit by the MPAA. And Stephen Hopkins has spoken about it in the past and said that he was devastated that this got cut so much because there was a lot of really cool imagery in it. I mean, there still is, but you can tell when you watch it, like the cuts don't quite match up.
There's a bit of clunkiness in there, but
I think you can see like an extended cut of it on VHS or a special edition VHS or something like that. And I think they show it in that Never Sleep Again documentary as well. Some images anyway. But I feel like this is such a cool death scene, and it is weird because it got cut so much and the director was quite upset, and he actually said, I think in interviews afterwards, that he doesn't even watch the film anymore because this one and because of Greta's scene that got cut as well. He says he can't even watch it because it's just he's unhappy basically. Yeah,
they ruined his vision. Like they took what he'd made and clipped it down.
Yeah, so basically Dan is on his way to visit Alice, and then he falls asleep in his van or his car, and Freddy takes over and
he takes the wheel.
Yeah, he takes the wheel, and now it's a bizarre sequence of things happen, but eventually there's a bit of a time loop where he wakens up again, but he has to go back into his van, but his van doesn't start, so he has to jump on a motorcycle instead. And then as he's going, Freddy becomes part of the motorcycle. You see his face. It's like a transformer.
It's even before when he falls asleep in the truck, and everything starts, like the speaker, he's got like a 2-way radio, and he can hear his mum like bitching about Alice. And then he's kind of like, what? And then the like Freddy kind of fingers like come out of the radio, but then next thing he looks over and Freddy's sitting there like drinking the champagne that he's bringing to Alice, but he like spits it and like the dashboard starts to dissolve. And then Freddy goes, bad year, Dan, and like starts to pour the champagne over his shoulder, but as he pours it over his shoulder, he pulls his arm, starts to like dissolve, pulls his arm off, sticks it to where the seatbelt should be, and then uses his claw arm.
Yeah, it's so random. Like,
I know the seatbelts have strapped onto Dan as well, but then he goes, buckle up, Dan, and he crashes the truck and flies out the window into the pool area. And you actually think, I was waiting for him to like tumble into the pool, but he stops just short of it.
Yeah, but then you sort of think, oh, that's it, over.
Yeah,
but then it's like a time lapse, so he's back at the swimming pool, and he then has to leave there, and he goes back into his van, and then this is when he goes on the motorcycle.
Yeah,
and then it's like just goes to 11. It's fucking.
You get Freddy's face made out of like wires and bits of metal on like the fuel tank part of the motorbike, and then like the parts of the bike start sticking up into Dan, and his blood starts to run down over the motor and stuff, and all these pipes and rods and bits of wire are like fusing with Dan's skin, and he ends up getting this like helmet thing. He does, as you say, he becomes a fucking transformer. He becomes one with the bike, and then he's like flying down this motorway, and then he snaps out of it, but it turns out that he's still like speeding towards an oncoming like lorry.
He was in the van all along, and when he wakes up, he just smashes into the lorry.
Yeah,
and dies basically.
Smashes, and that's when it cuts to Alice walking into work, and her work colleagues like, "Where have you been? It's been 4 hours." And I was like, what the fuck? And then she walks outside and there's the crash. There's poor Dan.
Literally outside the fucking
diner. Outside of her. Again, what about that's one of the things I love about I think, is it the last one as well? We see a diner.
Yeah.
The diners are lovely. And also
Freddy's. There was the time loop as well, was more evident in part 4.
Yeah.
Where Dan, she kept coming around the corner and going into the thing. Yeah, which I loved. I think that was a really great moment.
Yeah, yeah, we don't get it quite as effectively here, but yeah, her walking out. We got a wee autograph too. Oh, look at him with the wires going into his face. Yeah,
that's cool, isn't it? Man, that's class.
Unreal.
That is fucking unreal. I've got an even better one here. Where you see this one?
Oh.
So as you said, he sort of forms this sort of skull. Now I thought he looked like something out of Mad Max.
Yeah,
he sort of reminded me of your man Joe from Mad Max. There's the image there.
That's great.
That's the signature up there, but that's...
Hold up a wee bit more so we can get the wires and stuff. Yeah.
Kind of looks like sort of something like fucking like a really weird Darth Malgus or something.
Yeah, I was going to say, very Sith cyborg.
Yeah, real cool cyberpunk though.
There's a couple, I was going to say, we get sort of a cyberpunk Motorhead thing with that there, Tetsu. But then with Mike, we get steampunk, get a bit of a comic book steampunk vibe.
Yeah, later on,
character Mark. Later. Yeah, Mark, not Mike. Mark, yeah, we get a bit of a steampunky thing going on with his comic book hero character. But yeah, that moment with Dan, and then when she walks out and sees the devastation of the crash, and the truck driver who has just a red jumper on and the fedora and then all the blood, and he's just like, he came out of nowhere, he was like a jet man. It's like, what's this?
So random again.
Obviously, yes, he's freaking out and he's probably in shock, but it's just such a random. What are the chances that he dresses quite a lot, a whole lot like Freddy Krueger? But then when Dan looks at her and goes, "You want to make babies, Alice?" and like laughs, I was like, "Fuck, what?" Like, imagine seeing the fucking your partner's like body twisted up in a car crash, and then they shout that at you, and then she faints, and then she faints. Yeah, and
then she wakes up in a hospital. We'll try to get through this middle segment quite quickly, but she finds out she's pregnant. Obviously, Dan's the father.
Yeah,
and this is where she meets Jacob as well, who isn't real.
He is real, just not. He's technically like Zero. He's the manifestation of what he's going to be when he's older. Is this another time loop incident?
No, well, this is her dreaming.
Yeah.
Well, it is a dream. It's a vision, basically.
Yeah.
But she speaks to Jacob, and he sort of says that he's sorry about Dan and stuff, and there's a wee bit of a connection there. And then she says to Yvonne later, who works at the hospital, she asks about the little boy, and Yvonne's like, "What little boy? We don't have a children's ward." So that was kind of cool.
It's a good moment. Yeah, it's a good moment.
It makes you think, "Oh, what the fuck's going on here? Something weird going on here." So that's when we first see Jacob. It is a wee bit convoluted. I think introducing him as a character, I'm not 100% sure if they needed to do that. They could have maybe still done the same kind of storyline without actually having him be a character. And then this is the scene where we get Alice explaining the sort of backstory of Freddy Krueger to her friends. So Greta, Mark, and Yvonne, who apparently have never heard of Freddy Krueger, even though they go to the same high school as Alice and are the same age as her, and have probably lived in Springwood for at least a year.
They're like, they should definitely, you always hear like the local town stories. There's always a local town story, and how they've managed to avoid it, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, everything that happened the year prior with the other kids, her other friends dying, would still be news, but they sort of don't really mention that, which is, that's a big plot hole. So anyway, she none of them really believe her.
Is it a big plot hole? Because you think about it, the previous films, like the whole reason that Nightmare on Elm Street like 1 happens is because the parents just say and do nothing. So I mean, maybe just people in Springwood just ignore shit and don't talk about it. They're a very repressed bunch.
I do like that is one of the gimmicks of Springwood, is that it kind of forgets and it moves on. But there's only a year between these events usually, whereas the previous, whenever the original crime happened, the parents were younger, the kids were only babies, or they were young kids. So there's been 15 years or so between that crime. So you could understand why that has been dismissed, but I can't understand why kids who are in the same high school don't know who Freddy is.
They just don't care.
They don't care. They don't give a fuck. He's a dream demon, so maybe he's possessed them or something.
Just making them all forget.
Psychotic. What is it called? Shared
psychosis.
That's the one. So let's move on to the second death then, which is Greta, the model.
Greta, yeah.
So this is the one where she basically dies eating. Well, in the dream, she dies being fed all this food.
Yep.
In real life, she just.
What about Freddy's like wee spoon that he's made using like 2 of his claws? I quite like that, and he's got his wee chef's outfit on.
He does. It's a horrible scene. It's quite a memorable scene, probably for the wrong reasons, because it reminds me a lot of Monty Python.
With our thin mint.
Can you see it? You see the Monty Python when her cheeks start getting bigger and bigger, and it just turns so cartoonish.
Everything.
Yeah, it really sort of does take you out of it. But again, this is one of the other scenes that was cut. Apparently, this was supposed to be a lot more gruesome, and Freddy was supposed to feed her through her stomach. Her stomach was supposed to be cut open. There was going to be lots of blood. And actually, later on, whenever Mark dies, he sees Greta, and she's got loads of blood around her stomach.
Yeah, and he's eating bits out. Yeah, Freddy's eating bits from her stomach.
Yeah, but you don't see it in this scene, which is weird.
You know what my favorite thing about this scene isn't actually necessarily the death scene itself. It's the moment that Alice opens the fridge and the food starts to decay, but it's all stop motion and all the wee eyeballs and stuff, and then she like appears from inside the fridge door, and Freddy fucking grabs her by the hair and pulls the door closed, and there's just that notice on the fridge door that says "Da bitch," and it's just like, what a moment. Like, even if we hadn't seen her death, if we just had Alice's like what she'd seen and her reaction to it, like I would have been like, what the fuck was that? What's going on? Like that for me was great. I loved the stuff. You know what it reminded me of? The Peter Gabriel Sledgehammer music video.
Stop motion. All about stop motion, man.
Oh yeah.
There should always be more stop motion in films, I think. But so I have once more my final one of this episode. Erica Anderson, who played Greta.
Nice. And what's the?
It's just fed, and it's got his wee by the wee spoon.
The wee spoon, his wee claw spoon. Yeah. I mean, was Freddy's claws up until this point? He's had obviously his glove. He's had clawed fingers. He's had needles. He's had wires. The wires that go up into Dan's face, and then a spoon. Have we had any other claw variants?
He's basically just like a kitchen utensil set.
He's a Swiss Army. He's Swiss Army claw.
Swiss Army Freddy. He's neutral. But yeah, so love that. I do like the scene. I think it's completely stupid. It's very cartoonish.
It's manic. The all Irma's friends as well. They remind me. They remind me of, all the people at the start of Rocky Horror Picture Show that are like there for the party. Yeah, that's who they remind me of. All these wee random characters who are just there for the sake of being there for a party. But it's the way, as I said, the way they're all just sitting there looking at her, and Freddy's like burping her like a baby. He's like, "You are what you eat," because she's been eating from the baby doll. And then he's like trying to burp her, but as they're looking at her, she's just like standing, like doing like, and like nobody gets up to help her. Like surely somebody should have got up and tried to give her the Heimlich. Like her ma's rich, she's bound to have doctor friends there. No one does nothing until she falls in. And again, very, very may have influenced Edgar Wright slightly. The shot of when she hits the plate and the shots from underneath the plate looking up into her face, that I got big old Edgar Wright vibes from that. I really enjoyed. I like that. But yeah, I would have, you know what, I would have been appreciated like if this scene had maybe been cut more, but we'd seen more of the Alice stuff of the stop motion decay and all, because I love it.
Definitely. So it's basically her, Mark, and Yvonne left, and then we get the scene where this was the scene I was talking about at the start, where she goes to check her baby to make sure her baby's okay, because she's starting to connect the dots here, and she's starting to realize that it's got some sort of connection to her unborn child. So she goes to check the baby, and then she sees the baby in the ultrasound, and then we get this insane scene.
That scene is like some weird trip where you see like the 3D rendered baby with like Freddy's face looming behind it.
It's like something comes over her, not literally, but there's like a blue sort of thing, electric shock that goes down her body.
A blue hue?
And then we're transformed into her. Well, first of all, you think you're going into the machine.
Yeah, but then
then you go from the machine
fleshy
uterus.
Yeah.
And then
we go into her womb, like we're swimming around in her womb, and the baby, the fetus is in there, and Freddy's in there.
And then you see the souls of Dan and Greta, and then that's when.
But they stay as they look whenever they die. So she's still got the big like hamster cheeks, and Dan's still got like the wiry skull cap thing on. And then is this the one where they go back to Elm Street, or is that just after?
So
this?
Yeah, there's a scene where Mark is pulled into one of his drawings. So he's drawn the Elm Street house, the original Elm Street house, and he's pulled into the house. And then it's basically to set up his death. And she automatically knows what to do. She draws herself and writes her name just in case somebody else was pulled in. So she pulls herself into the drawing, and it happens to be Freddy's house, the original house, which again, beautiful set. I love that set. Really grim and dirty looking. And then that's where she speaks to Jacob, and Jacob's like, "Oh no, why do you not like me?" And oh, my friend's coming back and stuff.
My friend with the glove,
the fingers, the fingers on the glove. And then that's basically filling in the blanks to where we're going with this exposition. It's not heavy exposition, but it is basically filling the blanks in.
It's a wee bit fan servicey, taking us back to the original house. We have to visit there at least once.
I love it. So then we go back to the real world, and she's obviously had the scene in the doctors. She's connected the dots. She knows that the souls of her dead friends are being put inside her baby, so that Freddy can be reborn through her baby somehow. And she's magically just put this all together in her head in a matter of minutes. And then she's with Mark, so Mark's the next death. First, don't we get a scene with Yvonne first?
Freddy uses Yvonne to distract Alice so that he can get.
That's the one.
He goes. So Yvonne's in a hot tub, and then she leaves the hot tub to go onto the high dive. Now, apparently, what's the name of the actress that plays Yvonne?
Kelly Jo Minter.
So she apparently had a real bad time filming this because she had food poisoning whenever she was filming. I read that there. But yeah, that moment where she climbs up onto the high board and she's sort of walking up it, and then the lines, the scratches come down it, and it curls up into big clawed fingers around her. I was like, that's great. That's great. And then she looks down and she sees the pool, and she goes to jump, and as she jumps, the pool disappears and there's just a wee puddle, but she manages to jump down into the puddle. That's a great moment. I really like that there.
Yeah, that takes her into the asylum. And then we find out that Freddy doesn't want to go into the asylum because he knows his mother's there. His ma's there.
His ma beat him. His
ma's going to slap his chest.
He'll get a slap burst. He'll get scalp burst, boy.
It's funny because he's in that wee compartment, and then when they come out, he's like, "Oh no, oh no, I'm not going to see ma.
I'm not going to do it." It's
every young boy is afraid of their ma beating the fuck out of them.
Yeah. Mama, no.
Hello. So there's a lot of scenes there in the space of maybe 15 minutes that are just like, wow. You can clearly see that these were just written just to fill a gap, just to connect, the dots to go from A to B, and it doesn't really make a lot of sense. But ultimately, we get to Mark. Yvonne survives, by the way.
Yeah, Yvonne managed to get away.
We find out that Mark is dead, and his death. Let's talk about his death.
His is great because obviously being a couple of comic loving boys, like how could we not appreciate this one? This one I think is probably one of my faves. I think it's got to be sort of up there with just the way Mark takes Freddy. I love that it goes all black and white. It goes all inky, and we see Freddy with Greta, or was it Mark falls into like this warehouse, like a comic book warehouse?
Yeah, it looks like a warehouse.
And then something starts falling in his head, and it's syrupy blood. And then it's Freddy is eaten from Greta's stomach, and then he pushes Greta, and as she falls, she turns into the wee doll that he was feeding her in her death scene, and it breaks in front of Mark. And he's like, what? And she's like, oh. And then Freddy jumps down then and is going to go for him, but he like turns around. As he turns around, he turns into this like sepia steampunk superhero with like guns that are attached to like a harness, and he's got this like rangefinder that's just a crosshair, but it's really cool. And he it's obviously he's the badass now, but I love when he shoots Freddy, instead of blood, it's confetti. Like bits of colored confetti are like flying off Freddy, which is great. And Freddy falls back, and he thinks he's won the day, but then when Freddy launches back up, he's got the big fucking black lightning bolt across his sweater, and it's a very obviously not Rubber England at this point. And what does he say?
Do you know who it looks like, Danny? It looks wild like the guy that's in the very opening scene, the opening sex scene.
Who'd have thunk? Even though we don't really, we just see his definition. We don't see his face or anything. But yeah, like that moment where he stands up, and he's obviously not at Rubber England anymore because he's a very butch man. But he's got like the jumper, but there's also a bit of a cape, and he's got the black lightning bolt across him. He's faster than a lunatic, stronger than a raving maniac. It's Super Fred. I love that. I thought that was such a good moment.
It's really sort of cringy and cheesy, but man, I love it too. I fucking adore it. I think it's so cool.
Such a good moment. And then he swipes at Mark, and Mark's turned into like a 2D comic version of himself. And as he cuts him, all the color bleeds out.
He's paper. He's a comic
of the image. He's a paper page, and as Freddy cuts him, all the color bleeds out from it, and then Freddy's just like swiping at him, and all the wee bits of paper flying over, and the wee paper arm falls to the ground, paper legs fall to the ground. It's just Freddy's having absolute frenzy, like tearing him up, and it's he shreds him up. It's great, just a great death, and there's no blood. There's no blood in that entire scene.
They should have called him Shreddy Krueger.
I see what you did there.
There's no blood. It's very inventive. It's very imaginative, and you have to applaud the imagination behind it.
Yeah.
And it may be cheesy, but fuck, it is.
It's pure. Cool. It's pure comic fantasy. Like it's so good, and I love the fact that there's, the other two have been fairly gruesome up until this point, but this one actually steps back and goes, how do we imply violence without showing gore and blood? Comic violence. It's great, pure cartoony.
The Phantom Prowler is the name of Mark's superhero.
Wow.
I love you say when he goes into the comic and it's black and white, like they had to paint everything that you see there is painted grey. So that's practical. Apart from him, the character.
Apart from Mark and the blood still stays red. That's coming out of Greta.
He's in colour, but everything is painted like a grey to make it look like black and white. And if you look carefully at some of the things, you can see a wee bit of colouring, which they must have missed or whatever. Or after shots, it was kind of the paint came off it a little bit. I love that, work ethic where they were like, let's paint everything instead of just kind of like just making it black and white in post or something like that, which probably would have been easier. No, maybe they couldn't do that. I don't know, but I do love it. It is cheesy. You think it's your best one of the?
I think it's one. It's not the best, but I think it's one of the best. I definitely think it's one of the more creative ones, and I feel that it's one of the ones that steps away from thinking we need to try and make this as gory and bloody as possible and tries to be a bit more creative.
It is definitely one of the most creative kills of the entire franchise. I do feel like this kill, just thinking about Freddy's Dead, the next film, this one definitely influenced Freddy's Dead more than the other kills, in terms of the kind of goofiness and the kind of cartoonishness, but the creativeness as well. So fair play. So Mark's dead, Greta's dead, Dan's dead. It's just left to Yvonne and Alice.
Yep.
And Alice has sort of figured out what they need to do. They need to get Freddy back to the asylum, and they need to get Amanda involved as well.
Yep.
And this is what kind of brings us to the finale of the film,
which
is heavily influenced by M.C. Escher, the artist M.C. Escher, who Stephen Hopkins was as an illustrator as well, so he grew up painting and illustrating, and he was a massive fan of Escher. And this was one of the first things that he said to Robert Englund whenever they first met. Robert Englund has said that they went to a cafe or something, or a bar, and he was sort of pitching the idea and how it would look, how the film would look, and he basically said M.C. Escher, and Robert Englund was like, say no more, let's do it. So
I love that moment where they're doing the M.C. Escher, the stairs, and again, watching that, it was just like Labyrinth, the scene from Labyrinth when they're Sarah's chasing Toby around, and Jareth the Goblin King sort of like talking after, and we get the same here where we've got Alice chasing after Josh, whilst Dan, but not Dan, is also trying to convince Jacob that he's on his side, but he's really just being a bad egg.
I like that it's like, a mix of like practical sets. So there's a part of a set there, and obviously there's like CGI or matte paintings or whatever mixed in as well. Some of it looks better than others, but it gives off everything that it needs to give off. It does its job. It's pretty creative and surreal finale, I think. Anyway,
who did it first, Labyrinth or
the Labyrinth? Yeah, Labyrinth.
Yeah.
But it is a little bit anticlimactic in how Freddy dies eventually, because like this is a guy who's super powerful, but for some reason he gets attacked by inmates and they rip his limbs off. The inmates throw his limbs, and his limbs hit the ground, and they turn into loads of spiders.
Turn into spiders. Yeah, the tarantulas.
There's a close up of a tarantula, and he's got like a wee red red stripe on his back, which I thought was cool.
It's cool, but
it just makes no sense at all.
It's a bit, that bit kind of stunts it, because then we get the actual like how Freddy's beating this, which again, like I don't think is a bad ending, but you're right. I think like this whole kind of sequence starts to kind of slow the roll a bit and just makes it a bit kind of like, okay, we're here, we've reached the end of the movie. Like even watching it again this time before this, I was like, I'm nearing the end now, and I'm kind of ready for it to be over. It
just feels like they were just like, oh, how can we kill Freddy this time? And then they were like, right, well, we have to have Jacob involved. Somehow could Jacob maybe use his powers against Freddy? And then they were like, well, how does Jacob get powers?
Yeah.
Oh, but Freddy gave him the powers.
Yeah, I do like that moment where Jacob's like, come on, Freddy, come teach me everything you know. And he's got the makeup and all on. And I think he does it, the actor that plays Jacob does it well. But yeah, it's that whole kind of moment, and then Amanda obviously steps up and is like, "Okay, Jacob, get him now!" And then like all the three faces of like Dan and Mark and Greta, but it's the way they're like tethered to Freddy's back. But again, Greta's still got the big fucking hamster cheeks, and they're all kind of like coming out of Freddy's back.
It's kind of like the souls escaping from the previous.
Yeah, but it's not done as it's not
not as well done. No,
it's not as well done. Like it's a bit. Yeah, it just looks maybe a bit too cartoony.
Yeah,
for this it just looks a bit daft. But yeah, as we said before, that's when Jacob delivers the school's out Kruger line rather than fuck you Kruger, and was it Freddy's being returns to his mother's womb?
Yeah.
Question mark.
That's right.
And then
we don't know.
Yeah, and Jacob transforms into baby Jacob, but it's like
just disappears.
Yeah, it goes from being like 11 years old to like 1 year old to being a fetus again, and gets like absorbed into Alice's womb. Yeah.
But actually, no. In fact, Alice as well. She turns at the end. There's a moment where she turns into old Freddy and.
Oh, well, she's like pull him out. She's trying to separate herself from him because Jacob gives us the exposition part about he finds it easier to get to them through you, and that's why she's like, I've got to pull, and there's actually that bit's kind of cool when she's like separating the two faces are kind of pulling apart,
and then his hand comes out of her arm. Kind of a little bit similar to part 2, only not as gory and gruesome. Then again, this is a wee bit more kind of cartoony, and you can tell in Freddy's makeup, it looks less gooey and gory and more just like a silicon mask.
It's supposed to, I was reading about that, and they said that the direction they were going for with that is that he was supposed to look older. They were supposed to give him an older look, but I don't know. As you said, it's a bit more putty looking. Yeah,
it's definitely more pinky, and it just looks more of a mask than actual real.
Yeah, flesh.
But Greg Nicotero was on the special effects team, and Robert Kurtzman was one of the guys on the special effects team too. They're legends now, but the effects are good. They're not as believable in the sense that they're a bit more kind of cartoony, I suppose, as you said. As we've used that word quite a bit throughout this episode.
It's probably one of the biggest things to take away from this is it's not only is it the gothic one, it's also the kind of cartoony one.
Yeah.
And then we get that moment where like Amanda's like step back, but as she steps back, Freddy's hand like bursts out of her stomach, and he's like shouting, and as he shouts, these like doorways seem to be closing but then bursting, but then a metal door closes and the wee view shutter closes over, and that says it's done. It's everything's okay.
It feels like they were just like, let's just do this really quickly, and we don't need to explain any of this. This is just something that happens at the end.
Yeah. And then we cut away to baby Jacob has been born, and he's in the pram, and everybody's cooing over him, and he's Jacob Daniel Johnson, who his story doesn't end here. He makes appearances in Freddy versus Jason versus Ash. He makes appearances in the comic book series as an older character.
We do end the film with Alice, very ethereal, very dreamlike, and then it cuts away, and you see just one shot of one of the wee jump rope girls, and you hear the song just silently in the background. So, as always, Freddy is always lingering there, even in his death.
You know what actually got me? So just as it cuts away to the credits, you get the fucking Vincent Price laugh. And I was like...
You do? That's right. Wow.
I was like, does this film end with Thriller over the credits? But then it's not. It's a wrap. But yeah, it's definitely the Vincent Price, like
You're
the
right.
Thriller. It's the Thriller laugh.
Yeah, but they would clearly use that as part of their song.
Yeah, it's used as the opening to the rap that plays, but I genuinely, like, again, something I completely forgot about, and I heard it and was just like, that's the Thriller laugh. What's going on?
Did you notice as well in the credits that they forgot to put Lisa Wilcox in the credits. So it starts with like fucking Greta, Yvonne, Mark, Alice's dad, and they just forgot to put Alice in the credits.
Forgot to put her in there. She is in the opening credits, but
she is, yes.
They forget her in the closing credits.
I know. Wow. Crazy sort of goof.
What a goof.
What a goof. What a goofy.
What an absolute goof.
So thumbs up, Danny, thumbs down. You actually seem to enjoy this quite a bit, more than I thought you would.
Yeah, no, again, it's been a wee while since I've watched it. I definitely, I think this one before, like the thing that always stuck with me was Fetus Freddy and the comic book Death. And that was kind of really it. It's one of those ones that I think a lot of it, as I said, I didn't remember the opening at all with the Rumpy Pumpy. I completely forgot about like the Blee. I completely forgot about the Tetsu inspired death. Yeah, there was quite a lot that I forgot about. So coming back to it now and rewatching it has kind of been like, oh, you know what? Actually, that was quite nice. Yes, the story's clunky, the dialogue's a bit meh. Freddy is probably not at his best in this. Freddy, for me, is he's a conduit in which the deaths get to happen.
Yeah,
you know,
he doesn't really do much. To be fair, Robert Englund, this is probably the least work he's had to do. I feel the least work he's had to do in any of the films.
I think the best part for him as an actor was actually getting to play the maniac in the asylum at the start, because he gets to really throw some sinister looks at the camera and it really comes through. Like, and I think quite.
Yeah, I think he's spoken about that, saying that he really enjoyed that. And there's actually I think the pilot episode of Freddy's Nightmares is the prequel to the original film, and he said that he really enjoyed exploring Freddy Krueger as a character, not just as the monster. But anyway, love talking about fucking Freddy Krueger. As always, Elm Street, my favorite franchise of all time.
Our favorite franchise. One of our favorite horror franchise. Yeah.
Love Dream Child, not as much as Dream Master, Dream Warriors. No. Probably the least favorite of the bunch that we've talked about so far. However, next time we will be talking about Freddy's Dead, which that's gonna be a fun chat. I think
this Dream Child, as I said, there's bits that I definitely remember before doing the rewatch. Freddy's Dead, I completely forgot that his dad was played by Alice Cooper.
It's a very bizarre film. Freddy's Dead.
I'm interested to rewatch it because I remember nothing.
Good, happy days. Yeah. Right, well, that's all we've got time for. As always, go and follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Fright Club NI. And please go and check out the website. It's www.frightclubni.com. And Danny, what else do they have to do?
They gotta hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell icon, get the notifications to remind you when we're uploading our Monday Night Frights, which is every 2 weeks on the Monday. And also leave a comment below. Should we cover Freddy vs. Jason? Should we cover the remake? And should we maybe touch on the first episode of Freddy's Nightmares if we can find it?
We could keep going after the films.
Let us know down below if you would like to see such things. But Gav, you wanna say goodbye to everybody?
We will see you in 2 weeks for another episode of Monday Night Frights. As always, take care, stay safe, all the best, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
It's a boy.
Boy.